Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamunatiravanam Chadi Jamunatiravanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Brajajanarandana Jamunatira Vanachadi Jamunatira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajagacharya Astakarasatasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Well, resuming where we left off some millions of lifetimes ago. Canto 10, chapter 37, text 22. 10:37:22. And I'll read the translation from BBT for that verse. This is spoken by Narada to Krishna. I'll do the context. The context is Narada says to the personality of Godhead, by your mercy, I understand the truths about you. By your mercy, I understand the sequence of your pastimes, which could mean he just understood it because the Lord in the heart informed him, or from previous yuga cycles he knew, or there's different reasons why he knew, but he knew the sequence of his pastimes, and he knew that the pastimes in Vrindavan were coming to a close, and so he did two things. He went to see Kamsa to request Kamsa to do a few things that would accelerate Krishna coming to Mathura and killing Kamsa. He didn't say that was his motive, but that was his motive. And then he went to see Krishna in Vrindavan. So Narada has access to Vrindavan, but he only has his interest is Krishna's service. And so he spoke to Krishna in a very diplomatic way, very tactful way, where he just reminded Krishna of his purpose, his pledge to the demigods and to his devotees outside of Vrindavan, because they have fear, and you remove fear from your devotees by your transcendental pastimes. And so he didn't say, time to wrap up here, Krishna. He didn't direct Krishna. He was just speaking of what the future pastimes of Krishna would be in different ways. He describes the sequence of those events, not exactly chronological, but many, many, many. First, he spoke just 3 verses of glorification of Krishna's position. After finishing what his pastimes would be, then comes text 22. And we've been spending about 10 days to 2 weeks on this one verse, because it's important. And it's important to understand Krishna Tattva. And by understanding Krishna Tattva, all kinds of good things can happen. Like no more birth and death, and even more than no more birth and death, and being able to enter into rasa, a loving relationship with Krishna, knowing who he is. Without knowing Krishna Tattva, that's notional. So, there's several parts to the verse which have been expanded on broadly by Jiva Goswami in his Bhagavat Sandarbha. So it's describing Bhagavan. We know Bhagavan means one who possesses all opulences in full. So it's not just the 6 bhagas which are described in this Bhagavat Sandarbha, but many other things. The Sambandha Gyan, it's the relationship between Bhagavan and his opulences and the spiritual ones, the material ones, and how they interact, and it's high technology. And for some people that don't like technology, it's like, let's get back to the pastimes. But the pastimes have their potency, and all of this understanding of Krishna has its potency also. So here's the translation for text 22. Let us approach you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for shelter. You are full of perfectly pure spiritual awareness and are always situated in your original identity. Since your will is never thwarted, you have already achieved all possible desirable things, and by the power of your spiritual energy, you remain eternally aloof from the flow of the qualities of illusion. So rather than summarizing the so many things that have been said. We'll just go forward, but the power of Krishna's spiritual energy is going to get attention this morning. So I'm reading from Jiva Goswami's Bhagavat, Sandarbha 117. The translation reads, the Lord's Swarup means his form, exists as Shakti and as the possessor of Shakti. The Sandini Shakti manifests Krishna's form, and his form has all Shaktis, we'll hear. It was explained that Bhagavan means, quote, he who exists with predominance of being the possessor of the Shakti. Shaktis should be, which are defined as arising from his Swarup. So we've heard about this in previous sections, his Swarup Shakti. So Swarup Shakti rises from his Swarup, and he possesses, unquote. That's a definition, one definition. Lakshmi is she who exists with predominance of the Shakti. To show this, some difference of some of the unlimited Shaktis are shown by different functions. So get ready. It's technology. Spiritual Shakti, including Lakshmi, is one of those Shaktis, has there's some difference amongst those unlimited Shaktis that have different functions. Then he goes on to quote Canto 10, Chapter 39, Text 55. This is Akura's vision in the Jamuna River. So it's from that section, and this is what he's seeing. Also in attendance, so the Lord's form is described. Also in attendance were the Lord's principal internal potencies, plural. His internal potency has divisions of internal potencies. And here's the list, right from the verse. Shri, Pushti, Gir, G-I-R, Kanti, Kirti, Tushti, Ila, and Urja, as were potencies Vidya, Avidya, and Maya, and his internal pleasure potency, Shakti. This reference is found in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, Chapter 5, Text 84, and it's just describing Chapter 5 in Adi Leela. Go back. The glories of Lord Nityananda Balaram. In that section, text 84, it's describing Bhagavan. Balaram is the first expansion. He also bears the title Bhagavan, and here's the meaning of Bhagavan from Adi Leela, Chapter 5, text 84. Text 84 is quoting 113 Bhagavatam. And then in the commentary, Prabhupada writes, the commentary of Madhvacharya, the commentary of Madhva on Srimad Bhagavatam mentions that the following 16 spiritual energies are present in the spiritual world and it's a slightly different list than what we just heard from Canto 10, Chapter 39, Text 55. It's just expanded, so there's a shorter, there's a more complete, and then we'll hear something further. So here's the 16, and they're listed by number in the purport. Shri, Bhu, Lila, Kanti, Kirti, Tushti, Gir, Pushti, Satya, Jnana, Jaya, Utkarshini, Vimala, Yogamaya. So Yogamaya is one of the spiritual energies present in the spiritual world. Pravi, Ishana, and Anugraha. That's 16. And there's a longer list. Oh, excuse me. The Laghu Bhagavatamrita commentary. Laghu Bhagavatamrita is a book by Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Baladev Vidyabhusan comments on this verse from Laghu Bhagavatamrita. The above energies are also known by 9 names. The list of 16 sometimes can be known by 9, and they're almost the same. Vimala, Utkarshini, Jnana, Kriya, Yoga. So it doesn't say Yogamaya, but it says Yoga. Pravi, Satya, Ishana, and Anugraha. So 16, 9, and then comes Jiva Goswami. And Jiva Goswami is expanding, according to Prabhupada's purport here, is from text 103, which is not the one that we're discussing, but the one we're discussing, he's going to go into it. So it's a longer list that ends with etc. Shri, Pushti, Gir, Kanti, Kirti, Tushti, Ila, Jaya, Vidya, Maya, Samvit, Sandini, Hladini, Bhakti, Murti, Vimala, Yoga, Pravi, Ishana, Anugraha, etc. All these energies act in different spheres of the Lord's supremacy. So let's step back, and what we're going to hear is some details, but the principle is, when we hear the word spiritual potency, sometimes devotees get confused. Like, wait a minute, Radharani is the internal potency. She's the pleasure potency, but she's part of the internal potency or spiritual potency. And Yogamaya, what's Yogamaya? And it's Radharani, Yogamaya. They're just parts of, they have different functions. That's part of what's being said here. His principal spiritual potencies have their functions, and they do different things at different times for different purposes. Going back, I don't know, maybe a week ago, we heard those spiritual potencies also animate the illusory power of the illusory potency, because one of them, listed in at least 2 of these lists, is Maya. So Maya has her place in the spiritual world. And then there's the counterpart. But it's not the Maya that we know. It's we'll say it longer, Yogamaya, and Yogamaya has her expansion. That's Mahamaya, and they're like sisters or something. They're not exactly the shadow of the source of the shadow. And there's but the diluting force, the diluting potency of Maya only is activated by spiritual potency. We'll say it in reverse. When spiritual potency withdraws the diluting potency of Maya, she can't act, she can't dilute. That's what Vyasadeva saw. Maya was Mayam Chat Tad Apashrayam. She was under his control. So how is she controlled? By spiritual potency. Although she's the illusory potency, controlled by the spiritual potency. So it's a little complicated. This isn't for lazy people, but you know, at the end of this, it's like, wow, it's really amazing, huh? Krishna's got lots of potencies. So here we go. Jiva Goswami writes, Shakti refers to Maha Lakshmi, who arises from his Swarup. The word Shakti applies to the Lord's internal Maha Shakti, the original shelter. Maya is the external Shakti. Shri and other functions and others function both internally and externally. So this becomes now a new topic, externally and internally. And we need to, so it'll say again, the first means internally. And the second group is externally. This should be understood in all cases. The first type is now discussed, so the internal type. Shri is the Lord's wealth. She is not Mahalakshmi, since Mahalakshmi is her source. That will be discussed later. So he'll go further. The second type, that's the external, is now discussed. Shri is material wealth. She is depicted in the following. This is Prithu Maharaj speaking to Vishnu at the time of his coronation. Lord Vishnu comes and he speaks. And he says, Sva eva dishnye viratasya kim taya. Translation. This is Bhanu Swami's translation of this text. What use do I have for her, since I have your power behind me? The material wealth. And Dishnye, word for word, BBT, this is Prabhupada. Dishnye means in your opulence. Abhiratasya means of one who is fully satisfied. Kim Taya, what need is there of her? So what's need of material opulence when one is fully satisfied with being connected with Krishna, spiritual potency. Prabhupada's translation of that in this verse, BBT translation, you are so self-sufficient that you can do without her. That is, he, Krishna, has spiritual opulence. The material opulence is over there, and it's under his control, but he has no need because he has spiritual opulence. Or those who are connected with Krishna's spiritual potencies have no need for material opulence. What use do I have for her, since I have your power behind me? Then here's another reference. This is at the gates of Vaikuntha, Lord Narayan has come and he's speaking to the four Kumaras. And he says to the four Kumaras, even Lakshmi, to whom I show no attachment, but to gain whose favor others perform vows, does not give up the dust of my lotus feet. There's spiritual and material features, and one has to be clear which one is being spoken about. Next is Narada speaking to the Prachetas. So who are the Prachetas? Sons of King Prachiti Bari who have gone off to do meditation, and they've done their meditation, and they've got their realization, and Narada speaks to them. the Lord, being complete in his Swarup, does not care for the sum total of all wealth, which is worshipped by those who desire all wealth, and does not care for those desiring even a little wealth, or for human kings or devatas. He is dependent on his devotees. How could the devotees reject this Lord, even a little? So the emphasis now, it's a distinction between material and spiritual wealth. And one who has the Lord's shelter has spiritual wealth, and one who has spiritual wealth, Krishna is feeling some very special feelings towards those who have that attachment for him. That as he's detached from the material wealth, so are they. And there's no question of rejecting the Lord even a little. So here's Prabhupada's translation, BBT. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is self-sufficient, he becomes dependent upon his devotees. He does not care for the goddess of fortune, nor for the kings and demigods who are after the favors of the goddess of fortune. That's the material one. Where is that person who is actually grateful and will not worship the personality of Godhead? So those are three examples from scripture to make this distinction between material, spiritual, Lakshmi, or wealth, or Shri. Jiva Goswami comments, the kings and devatas are listed together because they desire wealth. It is narrated that Lakshmi, in charge of the three worlds, so that's the material one, having been destroyed by the curse of Durvasa, again appeared by the glance of Lakshmi, who is directly the consort of the Lord, when she appeared from the milk ocean. So this reference of Lakshmi being destroyed, that's the material Lakshmi, because you can't. So the circumstance was when Durvasa Muni saw Indra approaching on his Airavata elephant, and so he offered one of his own personal garlands to Indra, and Indra inconsiderately gave the garland to Airavata, and Airavata threw it between his legs and stepped on it. And so Durvasa Muni cursed him, that in the three worlds, opulence will be gone. So the spiritual goddess of fortune can't go out of existence, and Durvasa Muni has nothing to do with her. But she appeared again after that curse from the churning of the milk ocean. So it's just not like she didn't exist before, but that's the material Lakshmi we should understand. That's what he wants us to understand. There's, in all circumstances, there's material, spiritual. You have to be discriminating to understand which is being referred to here or there. It's part of the, how things happen. To understand how things happen, you need to understand the potencies of the Supreme Lord. And without saying negative, without understanding the potencies of the Supreme Lord, you're not going to understand how things happen. There's a connection with the spiritual potencies who are arising from his spiritual form. Continuing. Other Shaktis are similar. Pushti. So here's a little glossary. Pushti causes nourishment. They're spiritual and material. Gir causes good speech. Kanti gives beauty. Kirti gives fame. Tushti gives satisfaction. Ila, mentioned in verse 55, so that verse 55 is what Akrura saw in the Jamuna River. So among the things that he saw was Ila, and Jiva Goswami says, in that particular case, Ila refers to Bhu, the material potency of the earth. She also represents another Shakti. She, Ila, also represents another Shakti, namely Lila. Interesting. I find it interesting. Commonly, Jiva Goswami uses Yogamaya potency and Lila Shakti like they're one and the same. Obviously not one and the same because they have different names, so it must mean some distinction between the two. But they must cooperate to make things happen in Krishna's pastimes somehow. Paragraph. Vidya of the first type, that means the internal ones, Vidya Shakti causes realization of the Lord. This is a special function of the Samvit function. So remember, in that list, Samvit, Sandini, Ladini, Samvit means knowledge potency, so they somehow cooperate. It doesn't detail. Vidya potency causes realization. This is a special function of the Samvit function. Vidya of the second type, that means external, is the door to revelation of the first type. You go to the mode of goodness and you get that type, the external Vidya. And that's the door to enter. You through the mode of goodness, just like there's a window in that door across from me. So there's a part of the door that there's no window, you can't see what's on the other side. But through the window, you can see what's on the other side. So that's like the mode of goodness, or this material vidya, that because persons who are brahmanas, one of the symptoms is they have knowledge. What's a brahmana that doesn't have knowledge? Not a brahmana. And one who has knowledge, real, at least theoretical knowledge, that person becomes eligible gradually. There's other factors, but they become eligible to become brahmanas, or Vaishnava, thus brahmana, by having at least theoretical knowledge, and that leads to realization knowledge. The spiritual type, the Samvit potency. Avidya, we know what avidya means, ignorance. Avidya of the first type, what's the first type of avidya? Is the cause of forgetting the Lord's powers. So, what we've been hearing, because it's been Radhastami, we've been hearing all these Radha, Radha, Jai Radha, or Radhe. So, and with Radha and all of the residents of Braja, they don't acknowledge the opulences of Krishna because they're overwhelmed by the sweetness of Krishna. But so, what about us? Even if we're followers of Rupa Goswami, who's teaching us this type of bhakti, we're obliged to learn Bhagavad Tattva. That's what Bhagavad Sandarbha is. We're obliged to learn about the potencies. And what's the reason? Because it leads to knowledge of Krishna Tattva. And Krishna Tattva gives us entrance into our relationship with Krishna. No more birth and death. Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tattvataha. So it's Krishna Tattva chakvadeham purnat. So when one gets to that stage as a follower of Rupa Goswami to understand Krishna Tattva, then Krishna may make arrangements that the spiritual avidya potency covers our understanding of Krishna's potencies. We can say Yogamaya covers the residents of Vrindavan from understanding Krishna's potencies, or we can say, or combination of his avidya, spiritual avidya potency, and then we forget. But for now, the sadhana, the process is what we find in the Bhagavatam, because Bhagavat Sandarbha is a description of an aspect of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Sambandha aspect. So we're supposed to, put our seatbelts on and go through some bounces as we're trying to understand Krishna Tattva, because it nourishes our relationship with Krishna. We actually know who Krishna is, at least theoretically, by vidya. So the avidya potency, once again, is of the first type, that's the internal, is the cause of forgetting the Lord's powers. It is a function of the bliss of prema of his mother, Krishna's mother, Yashoda. It's the bliss of Mother Yashoda to not recognize Krishna's supremacy, his powers. And then he quotes, Jiva Goswami quotes Gopal Tapati Upanishad, Gopi Jnana Vidya Kala Prerakaha. Or translation, the Lord inspires the gopis with prema, filled with ignorance of his powers. The Lord inspires the gopis with prema, filled with ignorance of his powers. This will be discussed in its proper place. That's the final Sandarbha, Priti Sandarbha. Now the second type of avidya, that's the external, is the cause of the jiva's forgetting the Lord's Swarup, with the special function of covering the jiva. Paragraph. The word cha in verse 55 indicates other shaktis of the first type. So this is the internal ones. Sandini, Samvit, Ladini, Bhakti, Adhara Shakti. Adhara Shakti is, this term is mentioned in Brahma Samhita. It's the accommodating potency of the Supreme Lord. There's internal, there's external. Murti Shakti reveals the Vigraha of the Lord. We're going to hear some more about Murti Shakti. So it has its place in deity worship. Murti. It's the Murti Shakti. The Lord has revealed his form for our worship. Vimala. Purity. Vimala is this, like, I always wondered, why did Bhakti Vinod give the name to Bimala Prasad? Because commonly Bimala is known as, the material potency, but there's the internal potency. And if I'm not mistaken, something like this, in Jagannath Puri, after everything is offered to Lord Jagannath, that same prasad is taken to different of the devas, but it's offered first to Bimala Devi. Is that right? Correct? But there's the external and there's the spiritual. Okay, so back to this list. Purity, Bimala, purity. Jaya, Yoga, Pravi, Ishana, and Anugraha. He gives the meanings, mercy. The Shaktis are mentioned in Hari Bhakti Vilas commentary in relation to P-I-T-H-A, Pitta Puja. Not father worship, but Pitta. Vimala, Utkarshini, Jnana, Kriya, Yoga, Pravi, Satya, Ishana, and Anugraha. Doesn't give the detail, just makes that reference. That this is a common list, in other words. Sandini is also called Satya. So Sandini potency is the existential potency, similar to the Sat Chidananda, Sat and Sandini are practically interchangeable. Sat means it exists. Sandini means same existential potency. But existence and truth are, if not one, they're quite similar. Sandini is also called Satya, truth and existence. And Jaya is called Utkarshini, or attractive. Yoga means Yogamaya. Samvit, knowledge potency. Samvit is the Jnana and Ajnana Shakti. Now this is in the internal side, causing awareness of the Lord and forgetting his powers. This is also called Shuddha Sattva. Shuddha Sattva. So these Sanskrit language is very precise, and there's different ways of describing the same thing. So it's not like this means that. It's just a different way of describing the same thing. Shuddha Sattva is similar to the Vasudeva state. Like Vasudeva, being in the Vasudeva state, was able to receive Krishna within his mind. Right? That description in the Bhagavatam. You with me? You're not familiar with that? In this description of Krishna's appearance, first he appeared within the mind of Vasudeva, and the commentary says this is the Vasudeva state. So someone else that has the Vasudeva state may not go by the name Vasudeva, but it's the place, so to make the heart pure, Shuddha Sattva, not material Sattva, but Shuddha Sattva, then Krishna may appear. It's an invitation. It's a suitable place for Krishna to appear. So this is also called, this Samvit is the Jnana and Ajnana Shakti that is also called Shuddha Sattva, or the Vasudeva state. Pravi is the cause of manifesting unlimited variety. Ishana is the cause of Shakti ruling everything. The second type means external, of these Shaktis manifest similar items in the material world. The functions, plural, the functions of Maya are not described since they serve material activities. In Bhagavatam, Maya's service is considered to be ordinary, since her service lies in the material realm, taking shelter of the Purusha avatar and Angsa of Bhagavan at a great distance. So Maya Dakshina Prakriti, that means Purusha avatar, means the super soul, the Paramatma, is under super soul's adhyaksha. So Maya is under super soul's adhyaksha, and also the whole shebang, the whole material energy, its three modes and the whole thing, because Maya is conducted or divided by the three modes. And so back in the Bhagavatam, Maya's service is considered to be ordinary, since her service lies in the material realm, taking shelter of the Purusha avatar and Angsa Bhagavan at a great distance. Thus Narada praises And it quotes two verses, one of which is our verse, text 22. Text 22 is where we started in the beginning of the class. It's the continuation of Narada's encouraging Krishna to go to Mathura and continue with his pastimes. And now he's speaking truths about Krishna. So Krishna Tattva. So here's the translation of Bhanu Swami translating Jiva Goswami, text 22 and then 23. Let me surrender to you, Bhagavan. You are the condensed form of pure knowledge, and by your Swarup Shakti you have all powers. Your desires are always fulfilled because your Swarup Shakti, because of your Swarup Shakti, you are never touched by the material gunas. And text 23, I bow down to you, the Supreme Controller, dependent only on yourself. By your potency, you have constructed the unlimited particular arrangements of this universe. Now you have appeared as the greatest hero among the Yadus, Vrishnis, and Sattvatas, and have chosen to participate in human warfare. It's like, Mathura is that away. But he's saying it very, he's giving Krishna Tattva to Krishna in Braja, who was so absorbed in the bliss of his pastime with the Brajbasis that it, by his own arrangements, his Avidya Shakti has covered his understanding of his opulences. So Narada is reminding him of his opulences so that you can protect your dear devotees, O great hero, your devotees, the Yadus, Vrishnis, and Sattvatas. The meaning of the two verses is this. I surrender to Bhagavan. So that's our text 22 verse. Who has a form? Ghanam, which is the Supreme Tattva, Vijnana, and is pure, Vishuddham. You have all powers, Sarvartam, which are Nitya Siddha, eternally perfect. The word in the verse is Samapta. Your powers are eternally perfect by your Swarup Shakti, or the form of your Swarup, because the Swarup Shaktis arise from your form. You have no desire for the actions of the material world, which are useless, amogha, vanchitam. But sometimes, though he does not desire it, he has a relationship with the world. Mathura, that way. You are free of the influence of the gunas eternally by the power of your Swarup Shakti. That was 22. Now it's a gloss of 23. I offer respects to you, Tvam, Bhagavan, named Krishna, and also to the Antaryami Purusha as your Angsa, Ishwaram. As Ishvara, you take shelter of yourself by your Swarup Shakti, Svashrayam. That the Purusha avatars take shelter of, the source of them. You have created unlimited variety of products by Maya meant for the Jiva. Atma Mayaya. Or you take shelter of yourself by your Swarup Shakti, your Maya, or Kalpanam, has created unlimited variety. Vinir Mitashesha Vishesha. You have manifested your human form for your devotees for play by manifesting your respective Shaktis simultaneously at the time of your appearance on earth when Ishvara merges into Bhagavan. You are the hero of the Yadus, Vrishnis, and Satvatas. You bear the weight of their prema. So go rescue them because they're fearful of Kamsa. And you know, wherever you go, fear is gone because you're there. So give them that relief. Almost done. In verse 10, 35, 55, that's the starting verse of this section, that's what Akrura saw. Shaktya can modify all the nouns. In that case, Shri is the root form, Pushti and others are her angsas, Vidya is Jnanam, Avidya is Bhakti. In this case, the prefix A with a line over it, not short, means correct, since Bhakti is called Rajavidya. Maya is the external Shakti. Her functions are another set of Shri, etc. The rest are the same. Paragraph. In the category of pure Bhakti, the Shakti should be considered as functions of the Swarup Shakti. Because, first, there is the one Tattva as eternity, knowledge, and bliss. There is one Shakti with three divisions. This is described by Dhruva in Vishnu Purana, quotes Vishnu Purana, speaking to Vishnu. In you, who are the shelter of all spiritual qualities, exist the energies of Ladini, Sandini, and Sambit as one entity. In you, who are devoid of material qualities, happiness, distress, and their mixture found in the material world does not exist. Sridhar Swami explains from Vishnu Purana verse. Ladini produces bliss. Sandini is continuity or eternity. Sambit is the Vidya Shakti. The one entity is the chief, fixed Shakti emanating from his Swarup. That one Shakti of three types is within you, since you are the support of all beings. Sarva samstitau. Whereas the Shakti related to the three gunas is not in you. That material Shakti is happiness, distress, and mixed. The producer of happiness is sattva, which gives satisfaction to the mind. That which gives suffering is tamas, by separation from objects of enjoyment. That which gives happiness and suffering is rajas, generating happiness and suffering from objects. These are not in you because you are devoid of the gunas. He makes some other reference, I don't know what this scripture is. Sarva Gya Sukta. Don't know what it is. Quote, the Lord, full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, is embraced by the Ladini and Sambit Shaktis. The Jiva, the very form of suffering, is surrounded by his own ignorance. Not Krishna's, but his. In order of excellence, they are Sandini, Sambit, Ladini. They are the cause of perception of all objects that exist, just as Pat, Ness, is the cause of perceiving all pots. Sometimes Bhagavan is mentioned as a form of Sat, or existence, as in verse from Chandogya Upanishad. Sat eva somyedam agra asit. The Lord as existence existed in the beginning. Sandini is that Shakti extended to all time, place, and objects. by which one maintains existence. Samvit is that Shakti by which one perceives. Hladini is that Shakti by which, in an excellent form of Samvit, one is aware of bliss. Maybe I should end. It goes on for some time. Should I end? It's already 8:26. I'll end. We'll continue tomorrow morning. It doesn't finish this Anuchade section, but again, it can be really long. So tomorrow we'll hear more about Samvit, Sandini, and Nadini. Krishna Krishna. If your heads are not spinning, congratulations. The purpose that is being pursued by Jiva Goswami, and the reason that we're covering this is to expand the understanding that Narada is expressing to Krishna. You know, Mathura is that way. Now he's come to Vrindavan. You know, it's different. His function is very different than what Brahma did. Brahma did was he wanted to see the extent of Krishna's mystic power, and the answer is there's no limit. And what he saw, what Brahma saw, included all of this. He saw the Lord with all of his shaktis and expansions and everything. So he's unlimited, and so by that realization, what was Brahma's request? Let me take birth anywhere in Vrindavan, so that dust from any of the residents of Vrindavan can fall on my head. He's as far as up the ladder is concerned, he's at the top. And he describes specifically in his prayers to Krishna, this whole thing that I created, this universe, is just illusion. Now, it probably doesn't feel good if your whole life is dedicated to something that's just illusion. But guess what, Prabhus? And we're very dedicated to being responsible and all of that stuff. So the answer is not just, check out, become karma sannyasi. That's not. The answer is, do you continue with your prescribed duties and always think of Krishna? So how are you going to always think of Krishna? Supposing you don't know so much about Krishna. Then you read Bhagavatam and you find all about Krishna until your head's spinning. And then then it's not. Then we can start to understand who Krishna really is. And as we start to understand who Krishna really is, then there's a little more encouragement to go further and go further. But supposing you're covered by Maya, it's not possible to understand what Krishna really is. So what are you left with? You're left with the three modes of nature. And we just heard what the three modes of nature do. Now that is an option, but it's not recommended. And so we're hearing things that are really high. That's okay. We'll go to school and learn things that are really high, and then gradually learn those things. You'll get good grade in our exams and get a job and have a career so we can enjoy the temporary. So doing those things in a responsible manner is part of what our psychophysical nature requires of us under the guidance of Scripture, and simultaneously to cultivate knowledge that's above us. It's beyond the reach of one who's covered by Maya. But the sound vibration is far more deep. So one can say, well, actually everything's in the holy name. Yeah, but I don't have any attraction for the holy name, although I know everything's there. So then we have a process, a sadhana bhakti process of cleansing and helping us to understand Krishna Tattva. And as that illumination rises, the darkness is dissipated. And as the darkness is dissipated, the attraction for Krishna becomes brighter, and the attraction for the temporaries becomes slackened. At least, gradually over time they go up and down a little bit, but over time. And it's the path of spiritual awakening. It's the path of bhakti. So it's, I struggled with this when I was, before coming here to Palatine. So maybe I should just skip all this and go back to the story. And the devotee saying, "No, this is great." He said, "Well, it's not 101. It's already 201 or maybe more." But so if you hear with the right aptitude, it's not, I don't understand all this. It's all new to me. That's okay. It's some details about Krishna Tattva that's just not available in. Where is there literature that explains all these things? God created heaven and earth. And He said it was good, and it was good. That's true. Let there be light, and there was light, and it was good. So it's a graduate study of theism that's really, really special. And somehow here we are, hearing Krishna Tattva in a way that we never entertained the idea that we might be hearing Krishna Tattva. Maybe we get a little restless, like, let's go back to the stories, please. That's nice. Anyway, so I just, with encouragement, we're continuing. Let's see what happens. That's our morning classes. Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes. It seems appropriate that it's coming at the end of Krishna's Vrindavan pastime. Before he moves on to Mathura, Dwarka, and beyond, we're getting now more of a picture of the personality of Godhead Krishna, who has all sweetness, and he also has all opulences. And both are there within him. And how does it work? At least some fundamentals. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. It's 8:34.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Want to validate my understanding. So we have been given this very simple process, but when we understand that there is a whole lot of complexity and details, that and trying to understand that helps increase the faith in this simple process.
Yes. Supposing somebody is not inclined to hear all of this, are they left to the side? No. Okay.
And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that, "O Arjuna, what's the need to know all this with just a spark of my energy?"
Well, that's his vibhutis. It's specific. Vibhutis means, it's way it's described in Canto 1, Chapter 3. Vibhutis are excellences within the material world. So the best of things is that in the material world, that's a vibhuti. representation of Krishna, of mountains and the Himalayas and so forth. Sharks, so fish and sharks, so forth. Those are vibhutis. I don't know why it didn't say whales, but it said sharks. So that's what vibhutis are. And that's a way of, when we see the world around us, it's a way of remembering Krishna. But so the list is exhaustive. It's unlimited, literally. And so try this one. With just a spark of my splendor, with my angsa expansion, I pervade and support the entire universe. So it doesn't mean you're wasting your time. Otherwise, why would Krishna put it in Bhagavad Gita? Because the question of Arjuna is, please describe ways in which I can always remember you. There's so many ways we can always remember him. It's not there's only one. Remember his vibhutis, and that's how you can remember him. The essence is we always remember Krishna, and there are various ways to always remember Krishna. Does that answer your question?
Maharaj, one comment and one question. In Svetashvatara Upanishad, we have read that that shloka where Parasya Shaktir Vividaiva Shvoyate Swabhaviki Jnana Balakriya Cha. I always wondered what are those multifarious energies of the Lord, and today I think I got the answer for those. And how
then
they,
there's etc. Because the list, there's no limit, but some principal ones are described. Go ahead.
and how the Jnana, Bala and Kriya are already present in all of these energies. They just act Swabhaviki, automatically. So it's very nice to hear that comment. And the question on that avidya that you mentioned, first type and second type, is that also one of the energies?
Which one?
The avidya, the first type and second type. And the first, it looks like based on the definition, you said avidya first type is cause of forgetting Lord's powers. It's a function of bliss of prema. Looks like Yogamaya.
Yeah. Well, it's similar, but there's a specific function. Yogamaya has multiple functions, and this is a specific function. Okay?
That's my question.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. We are getting to know more about Krishna, so I'm very grateful. I have a few questions, Maharaj. Do all these Shaktis work in material world, because, or it is only everything is taken care by Maya Devi only in material world?
We heard it's the first.
All these Shaktis work.
We heard. In all cases, all Shaktis have their function in the spiritual and material realm.
So, so with regard to that, all these energies have internal and external aspects.
That's what we were just repeating what Jiva Goswami said. Yes, that's what he said.
So, how does it apply to me? How does this applies to me, or how do I understand that every Shakti has an internal and external aspect? Like, say for example, Pushti is there, Gir. So Pushti means nourishment, or Gir is good speech. So it has a spiritual aspect as well as material aspect.
When you eat, there's an aspect of feeling nourished.
Right.
There's a material aspect. So how do you understand, in practical terms? For everything, there's a Shakti. We don't do things without. That's practical. We're dependent. And there's so many energies, and some may be extended and some may not. So we're dependent. That's a practical application, is to understand we're dependent. And there's various features of our dependency, and in all those various features of our dependency, the Lord is behind them. That's the practical application.
So when we have spiritual realization, then we will realize all the in the internal.
Yeah, that just say, that the body, that there's the holistic picture with an H, not with W, with the holistic picture of our life as devotees. And our life as devotees, we don't neglect eating. Just one example, we don't neglect it. But when we're eating, we're encouraged by bhakti principle or bhakti shakti to think not about now my body's getting nourishment. We're thinking the spiritual side. It's just the same energy works this way, the same energy works that way, depending upon one thing, our regard for Krishna. And that's practical. We just so that the principle that makes it spiritual is turning our attention to Krishna. So engage in prescribed duties, including eating and thising and thating, and always remember Krishna. That's what we're told to do. That's the practical. We don't do excess and we don't do neglect. We as is appropriate for us, we accept things. Not in the mood of anasaktasya vishayan, not in the mood of vishaya, sense enjoyment. According to suitability, we accept. You eat this much or you eat that much according to what you require. But the eating process is not just for bodily nourishment. For bhakti, it's the eating process, and everything else is to help connect us with Krishna.
I just heard two more now.
Okay.
So I was thinking like all these potencies are so powerful, and my remembrance is artificial because I have to remind myself. And like
That's sadhana. It's not artificial. It's sadhana.
It doesn't feel natural. I mean,
Okay, but that's just because we're conditioned. It's not artificial. It's sadhana. Don't. That's a mistake. Thinking like that is a mistake.
Yeah, so I guess you have
Somebody
answered
might
my question.
criticize you, oh, you're artificial. And you say, excuse me, I'm following our acharyas. That's not artificial. That's sadhana.
So I was just thinking that being between remembrance and forgetfulness, so where can I settle down? I mean, because the Shaktis are so
Well,
powerful.
it's gradual. That's how you settle down. Purification. Then it becomes natural. And now it's cultivation. It's practice. Walking or riding a bicycle, those are motor skills. But, when you start to ride a bicycle, it's awkward. But once you have ridden a bicycle, you could, 50 years later, go back and ride a bicycle, and that skill is already there. You don't have to learn again. It's already there. So these are tendencies that are already there. So sadhana brings out the tendency that's already there. It's not artificial. It's natural. Practice. Next.
When I hear about all these like very out of reach things about Krishna, so I start feeling like I'm losing the aspect that had sweetness and all. Krishna is feeling more out of reach now. So I mean, I don't
So
know.
close the book.
But I also like to hear.
Okay, so keep the book open.
Thank you.
Don't go for a ride on the chariot of the mind. Don't be ruled by your mind. The mind will say this and the mind will say that. That's not why you do things, to follow the dictates of the mind. That's a mistake. What do we do if we don't do that? Because that's what we're used to. The mind says, so we do. The mind says, and so we do that. And we flip back and forth, following the mind. That's not, you get seasick, it's like, it's just very uncomfortable. You want to vomit, like, let me out of here. So, there's another option. You're anukul yena krishna anushilanam. You make anukul, you make choices of doing things because there's the pleasure of Krishna on the other end. So I may feel this, I may feel that. I do because it'll help me get closer to Krishna and its sense of being connected to Krishna. And if somebody doesn't have a propensity, as I said, I'll say it again. If somebody doesn't have a propensity to hear all this stuff, that's okay. They're not ineligible. It has its place in the cultivation of bhakti. It has its place. I just like, Bhagavad Gita. Okay? Chanting japa, worshipping my deity, and I'm happy. Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay.
Balancing everything is too complicated for me. Like when I hear the lecture, I get inclined, no, I should read more. But when I go back to my home, then so much of work is there to be done.
So we do some regulation, morning and evening. And then you go do your work. Okay? Anything online?
Question from Udayananda Prabhu. How to stay humble in ups and accept as it comes in downs?
How to stay humble when we're going through ups and downs.
Yes.
Well, there's lots of how-to questions. Have lots of how-to answers. But, because rather than say, just follow the bhakti process nicely, that's how-to. But I'll say, recognize that we're very tiny. And for how long have we been turning our attention away from Krishna? So the business is not just have ups and don't have downs. The business is to connect with Krishna. And then the ups and downs become irrelevant. Because that's not what, just like this question over here about I don't like and I like. So that's the mind. So detached from the mind by a spiritual conception, I'm very tiny. I've turned my attention away from Krishna for who knows how long, how many lifetimes, and here we are. And there's ups and downs. That's just the nature of being in the material energy. There's ups and downs. So let me just be very tolerant and patient and turn my attention to Krishna, because that's something I have faith in. And then, the ups and downs, generally, they will diminish. Or even if they don't diminish, it's okay, because I'm very clear what my life's mission is. And you do that. That's the humble position. Next.
From Sucharita Mataji, this is unrelated to current discussion. Was everything discussed between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadev Goswami covered in the Srimad Bhagavatam? I heard some demigod worship was also mentioned as discussion between Sutta Goswami and Shaunaka Munis.
Well, it's in second canto, chapter 2 also. Everything's there.
Another question from Udayananda Prabhu. Why is it so important to help others get closer to Krishna consciousness?
Because you get Radharani's mercy.
And what should be the mood while trying to let others know about importance of Krishna consciousness?
Be an instrument of the higher authorities. That's the best way. Okay, Prabhupada Ki Jai.